What is good, guys? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and a couple of other tickers, and break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, and what's going on with some news involving Tesla. But let me mention that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 7 free stocks, and all for in just 14 days. Anyways, for Tesla, we're seeing a very, very nice breakout right over here. I did mention to everyone that if we broke this white trend line right here, expect more upside, and that's what's happening so far. So today, Jerome Powell gave his speech, and he said quite a few things. For the most part, he was being a bit more on the dovish side. He mentioned that the economy is still holding up very, very well. The labor market is tight, but it's actually in a much better position than what many people were anticipating. On top of all of that, he mentioned that so far, things are looking pretty good. He mentioned the Fed has the tools they need necessary to bring inflation down. His confidence in bringing inflation down in the near term is not as high, but for the long term, he's still very confident things will be okay. And he continued to reassure, investors, people, the markets that he is once again in control. He's very confident that things will be okay, and the economy is in his opinion, in a good place, at least moving forward. He did actually imply that yes, inflation is still tough for a lot of Americans, especially lower class Americans, and it's very difficult to hear about that. So he's very, very careful with what he's trying to do. Now, I personally am not trying to say Jerome Powell's 100% correct about our economy being in a perfect place, because with these high interest rates, there is going to likely be more contraction coming. We are at risk of a recession, in my personal opinion. But Jerome Powell said what he had to say, and the market really liked it. For the most part, the market's still holding up, and that's why the market's kind of doing what it's doing. So I want to just call that out. Now, as far as Tesla goes, there's some news that came out. Tesla's head of Cybertruck manufacturing is out, and that is actually some big news. So Zhu was his name. I could be saying it wrong. I apologize, but his name is Zhu or something like that. However you would pronounce it. He was in charge of manufacturing operations at Tesla's highly successful Model 3 and also the Model Y production lines. And he is once again in a very, very tough place right now, as he is once again going to have to be let go. So it's once again not the best of news for him. So I just wish him lots of success and want the best for him. With all of this that's going on, if he left, we're not sure if he left Tesla on his own accord, but or if he was once again just part of the big layoffs. But either way, he has left back to China, according to reports, and he is stepping away from Tesla. So I just want to say I appreciate Zhu for his contributions, and I want the best for him in his future nonetheless. Also, there's a lot of headlines coming out that Elon Musk laid off the supercharger team, and now he's rehiring a large part of them, especially some of their important executives. So that is some important news. He also promised to spend over $500 million in expanding the network, and they are going to need some employees to do so. So that is something very important. I mentioned to everyone that, look, all these layoffs are not going to be a permanent thing. Tesla will eventually rehire key employees, so we shouldn't necessarily let that get the best of us. There's also news coming out that Tesla has been sued over emissions from the California plant, and this is actually very important. This was a big report that came out. Tesla's being sued by the environmental nonprofit that accused Elon Musk's electric car company of violating the Federal Clean Air Act hundreds of times by letting its Fremont, California gigafactory emit harmful substances into the air and such, right? So that's really important. We'll see what actually develops from this. So I found that so far Tesla's not really responded to this, but there could be a lot of civil fines involved if Tesla were to be found responsible and such. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. We'll wait and see what Tesla's response is. But as of right now, this is something that just came out, and we'll see what happens from here. Despite this news, Tesla's still holding up very, very well. It's been pushing once again towards this resistance at this 180 zone. So we're very close to 180. If we break this, look for 182, and our next target above that's going to be all the way up towards almost 185. That's going to be our next target if we break 182. If we reject off this 180 to 178 zone, we could be retracing back down to 175. Overall, Tesla's holding up nicely. It's kind of shuffling the 178s, and it's looking bullish as we've broken this resistance. Going back on the chart like this, you guys can quite clearly see Tesla had that white trend line acting as our resistance. We rejected off this 3 times, once over here, again over here, and then also a third time right here. But then today we finally broke through it, and that's a good sign of strength as we had a nice inverse head and shoulders setup. So the inverse head and shoulders is looking pretty good. Tesla can continue to go higher, but whether or not this continues will also depend on CPI. So far, things are looking pretty good for Tesla. It looks more bullish overall, by the way. And one more thing about Tesla, let me just mention If we were to lose 175, that would be a little bit more of a bearish signal. Then we could start sinking down to 173. Just want to call that out. It does not look like that's going to happen. It's favoring the upside. By the way, I just want to give you guys a warning about that level. So watch this 178 to 180 area break that, and we could easily start pushing up a lot more from here for Tesla. Anyways, going back to NVIDIA, we have this range. We have 908 as resistance, 900 as support, and 892 as support. It looks to me like we might be able to break 908 and start pushing higher. So I do favor the upside for NVIDIA, but we'll have to see if that ends up continuing or not. But overall, we're looking pretty good. For SPY, we're in a very, very critical place. SPY did dip a little bit during the pre-market thanks to PPI, only to get bought back up. During Jerome Powell's speech, we went up to almost the high over here at 522.5. So SPY moved quite a bit today. If you start from the pre-market, we moved about 4 points, down and back up. So quite a bit of price action. Now we're just shuffling around this 521 area, and we might just continue to do so, in my opinion, just remain range bound for now. We'll have to see if this little drop here was a liquidity grab for a bigger pump or not going into tomorrow. So CPI will determine which way we end up breaking. If we lose 520 and end up closing below that, especially going into tomorrow, we could turn more bearish and we could see a triple top rejection. If we end up breaking 522.6 and keep going, 524 is on the table for a nice breakout. That's also a possibility depending on how things look. For the QQQ, as of right now, we're looking a bit more bullish after Jerome Powell's speech. You guys can see the QQQ came down to about 440. Now it pumped back up to 444. So quite a bit of price action. Nice little push right here. If we keep going, look for 445.6, followed by 447. And then we could get very close to the all-time high if we keep going. If we lose 444, we'll be aware of 443, 441.7, and then 440. Overall, though, the QQQ is looking a bit more bullish, so we'll have to see how things go. For Apple's also trying to uptrend right here. We have resistance at 187. If we break this, we have 188 as our next target. If we lose 186.25, we're going to be dipping all the way down to 185. And if we lose that, we turn back to bearish. Overall, Apple is favoring bulls somewhat more. It's actually on a slight uptrend right here, and I do see potential for it to go a little bit higher, but it's not as strong as many of the others. For people interested in like AMC and GameStop, I wanted to now talk about them just real quick. GameStop pushed very, very nicely up to this 80 area, but then something happened. We started getting a lot of these halts due to excessive transactions and also because of, I would say, imbalances in order flow. So, with all the halts, you could even argue that there's some manipulation involved in them because of the fact that when we halted, we didn't continue to go higher. That's a bad sign. And that happened to AMC and GameStop. We halted, then we started dropping. We halted, started dropping. This happened many, many times today. So, that is kind of hurting the momentum because I mentioned yesterday we are momentum stocks. We need momentum to continue. And because the momentum is getting hurt by these halts, the share prices are kind of dipping a bit. So I'll be watching that 50 area on GameStop to see if we hold that or not. And then if that fails, let's watch 42.5 on GameStop. We'll see those two supports. If we bounce off those levels, we could be looking at resistance at 55. We'll be watching to see how GameStop performs, but the halts have been working against them so far. Same thing with AMC. Like we went all the way up to this 13 area, kind of rejected a bit. You guys can see we kind of rejected. But what happened is ever since we opened, it's been halt, halt, halt again and again and again for the share price of AMC. And we have resistance now to be watching for very close to this low 10 area. The support is trying to hold us around this 9.5 area. If we lose that, I'll be watching basically this 8.8 area. If that fails us, we could be dipping all the way down to 7.5 all over again. So the chart is still up 85%. We're still up 85% on AMC. Because we were up so big and with all these halts, it's very difficult for momentum to continue. And this kind of acts as a hindrance. Is this manipulation? It's up to you to decide, but that's what's been going on. I just want to call that out. Now, for Amazon, we're just shuffling right now near our 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame. That's actually at this 185 area. So we'll see if we get a bounce or not. If we bounce, look for 188. If we reject, we're going to be dipping lower. We're still kind of stuck. The same thing could be said about Meta. Meta had resistance at 470. If we reject here, watch for a dip all the way back down towards 465. If it breaks through this, we're going to be looking for 474. And we'll be very, very patient nonetheless just to see how things go. That's all I'm seeing, at least for the charts for the time being. There is some upside potential for Meta and also for the overall market if we get a decent CPI and we manage to hold support. So we'll just have to wait and see. The next thing that's going to affect us is going to be CPI at this point. But for now, the market's just range bound, so we'll give it some time. There are some tickers such as NVIDIA and Tesla which are outperforming and pushing very nicely. Even the QQQ is pushing well as tech is holding up. but we'll see what happens with the S&P 500, and we'll give it the time it needs. All right, so for Tesla, once again, Tesla's doing very well, trying to push up nicely. Let's see how well we hold in the 178 area. Keep holding this, and we do have potential to go all the way up to about 182 if we break past 180. So watch and see how Tesla does. Nice inverse head and shoulder setup. Looks more bullish to me. And the odds favor more upside later on, at least for Tesla stock. All right, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you guys have an absolutely incredible rest of the day. And I'll see you guys very soon in the next one. Thank you and peace out.